Hello and welcome to The Worth Read. Today, our guest is Gauri. She's a creative visionary which blends identity, craft, narrative. She's been a friend of mine for nearly 20 years now. I think we studied together in France. And today, I am so glad and excited to bring her on this platform because perfumes, cosmetics, and even fragrances is something which I've always been inspired and excited about. Welcome, Gauri, to this platform.
Thank you. Thanks, Josefa. Thanks for welcoming me and excited to speak with you.
So, Gauri, where do you think your journey with luxury or even perfumery or even cosmetics started? Can you give a brief intro into your life and how you reached today where you are and what you're doing?
Yeah. So I'm from India, and that's where kind of my perfume, what I like in perfume, started in India with something as simple as just my grandmother's garden, where she would like pick up jasmine flowers and put it in the temple, and that's where I was really introduced to smelling different flowers, different scents. And then, I studied pharmacy in India. And then when I studied pharmacy, we had a module during our pharmacy on cosmetics. So I completed my studies in pharmacy, but the cosmetics part was always what I felt was more interesting to me. So when I started looking out for my master's programs and I decided I wanted to go abroad, back of my mind, I always had this thing that maybe pharmacy is not really my calling. It was more the perfumes and the smells and the cosmetics that was exciting me much more. So I just started basically looking online on Google for perfume schools that could be interesting. And there was one in France called IFF, which is one of the oldest perfume schools in the Paris region that was this come up. It was not an easy decision to decide to come to France, a country where I wasn't speaking the language. I knew nobody. You have the experience in that as well. But luckily, I had encouragement from my family, and they said, yeah, go for it. That's how I landed up in France. I studied for the first year at IFF, so in the perfume school. And it was a master program, which was a double master's program, where the second year was in Italy. So the first year, basically, we were doing the more scientific part. And then the second year was slightly more the marketing part of fragrances and cosmetics. So we did the second part in Italy. And then for my internship, I decided to go back to India. I did a 6 months internship in a fragrance house called IFF, which is one of the biggest fragrance houses, an American company. So I was based in the Mumbai office. I did my internship, came back to Paris and graduated. And since I really wanted to stay in Europe, with IFF, I asked them if they had opportunities, and luckily opening in the Netherlands. So I worked in the Netherlands office for about 6 months. And during my time over there, I got a call from basically the HR of L'Oréal offering me a job. And to be honest, it was my dream job. My dream job was to really work between cosmetics and perfumes. And that's exactly what they were offering, to design fragrances for cosmetic products. So I was getting the best of both worlds at L'Oréal. And so I did complete my assignment in the Netherlands, and then I moved to Paris. So that was in 2010. And then I did about a good 13 and a half years in L'Oréal.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I quit L'Oréal 2 years ago, and then I decided to create my little company, my fragrance company, where we do fragrance workshops, so which is called Seeds of Scent. So that's the journey so far in a brief.
It's a beautiful journey. I recall us meeting multiple times, or I think few times when we were in City Universitaire, and then I was doing my studies, and you were
Exactly.
coming and visiting. Probably, I think I'm still excited about perfumes and how it can, transform. I think you back to your childhood and places, and fragrance is such a thing that you want you feel happy inertly, I think, from the inside. And I think that time I used to ask and come to your like room and see the fragrance box you had.
Yes.
Like, I don't know
The
how many
famous
were
kit.
there. Yeah, how
The
many?
kit had about like 150, I think, but I think during
Wow.
the 1 year we learned like maybe 500 different molecules.
And then you had to remember that, right?
Exactly. So there were the fragrance notes, the molecules, and there were also the fine fragrances that we had to kind of memorize. That was a lot of olfactive memory to take in during 1 year.
That is amazing. And I was just baffled by that how can you remember a certain fragrance from a certain difference? And then it has to be like so trained, right? You have to train yourself again and again and again.
Exactly. It's basically training. Like in many professions, some people do have it inbuilt. I could say for me, it was not necessary like inbuilt because I don't come from, for example, a perfumer family. But it's just the training, the practicing over time, smelling again. Basically, you need to use your nose a lot. You need to be smelling all the time and practicing re-smelling, trying to create a link with your smell and memories. So that's even in perfume school, that's what they told us to remember a smell. Try to create your own connection, your own memory with the smell, be it a fine fragrance or maybe a molecule like we talk about a simple molecule like hexanol cis 3. When you talk about a chemical molecule, it makes no sense to you. Then you create for you it will like it's basically what smells of cut grass. But when you want to remember it, they would tell us you
Yes.
create your memory with that molecule. Otherwise, it's just a molecule and it's difficult to remember. So it was basically from that time I started creating these to remember whether it's a scent or a molecule, memories between the link between smell and memories.
Can you tell us a brief, because I know my audiences and all, because I know that I have studied because we did perfumery in one part of my MBA,
Mhm.
and I know that there is going to be 3 layers of perfume. So can you tell us that how does a perfume work, and what are the layers, and how does it live on your skin? Because I believe that there is a layer when you have the first scent, the second scent, and the third scent, and then you mix and match things. So a brief on thing, because I am excited for my audience to
Yeah.
know that, because they only buy perfumes on brand names like I want Tom Ford, or I want Prada, or I want Gucci. But what really is a perfume?
So, what is a perfume? So, perfume is a mixture of molecules, chemical molecules, can be natural, can be synthetic as well, on a support. So, the support can be the most common support is what we use is ethanol, alcohol. So, that's when we call it as fine fragrance. Because you can also have, like I mentioned, I created a lot of the fragrances for cosmetics. So, there my cosmetic was, my support was basically a cream.
Yes.
Your support can also be a detergent because
Yes.
everything around us is
Yes.
fragranced. So when we use alcohol as support, we call it fine fragrance. So talking more about fine fragrances, because I can talk a whole podcast about functional fragrances, but let's stick to maybe fine fragrance for today. So when you talk about fine fragrance, basically the structure of a fragrance is quite simple. So like it's just the mixture of chemical molecules, maybe natural, synthetic, and the alcohol. And then this mixture is basically how a fragrance is structured. Again, quite briefly, but we have like what we call the top notes, the middle notes, or the heart notes, and the base notes. So your top notes are basically what's most volatile to you. When you spray a fragrance, what you're going to smell initially. It's like aromatic notes, citruses, orange, lemon, lavender, all those. You spray it, you're going to smell it because they're volatile. They're going to leave your skin quite fast.
Okay.
Then you have the heart notes. So your heart notes are they're slightly less volatile compared to your citrus and orange. You can have the floral notes like rose and orange blossom and jasmine. Those are your heart notes. So they're a little less volatile, but they're going to stay a little longer on your skin. And then finally, we have what we call the base notes. We can also call it dry down notes because when the others evaporate, what's left is your dry down notes. So all your musks, your ambery notes, your woody notes, all these are the down notes. So basically a fragrance is a combination of these three, your head, heart, and bottom. So these three combine to then give you your final product, your fragrance. So when you're choosing a fragrance, like you said, the brand, okay, you like a brand, why not go for it? But always try it on your skin because you can smell it like on us, what we call a smelling strip. It gives you an idea, but your skin is what is going to reveal the real fragrance. So maybe a fragrance smelling nice on someone, sometimes you say, on me, finally I tried it, it doesn't smell so good because maybe the top notes and the bottom heart notes smell the same, but what's staying really behind on your skin, the base notes maybe on your skin, it's interacting a little differently. So it's always important that you wear your fragrance before buying it.
Wow.
So
Okay.
that you see the different layers. So you really see the different layers and then you decide whether the bottom layers, which are going to actually smell at the end of the day, is fitting for you. Yeah.
Is it like the people say that the pheromones also come into this factor, that how good or bad, because a fragrance works for you? Because sometimes it's things that the fragrance is based on memories, but also the fragrance is based on how you are as a person. It reflects a certain characteristics as a fragrance.
Yeah, to an extent. For me, comes to a bit of your olfactive signature. So there are certain fragrances that may work on someone which don't work on someone else. But for me, it's your perception.
Okay.
So fragrance, what's interesting with fragrance is it's a science, but it's not like a super precise science. So basically, you make your
Yes.
own olfactive sense of it. I mean, I may think I don't like it, but it doesn't mean it's a bad fragrance or a cheap fragrance just because
Mhm.
I'm an expert. Someone, each one tries, wears it, and sees whether you like it. Does the signature work on you? It's basically your feel good with your fragrance. Of course, you wear it for others also to smell, but for me personally, I feel it's you should choose a fragrance on what's making you feel good. Once you feel good in
Interesting.
it, it's the others are automatically. I feel they're going to. I mean, you're having your own what we call the sillage. So sillage is kind of your scent trail. So if your sillage is positive for yourself, I feel you're going to leave that positive sillage on others.
Wow. Okay. That's pretty much like like a vibe or an aura kind of a feeling, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Through
it
through
is, I think,
the through,
oh man, this is very interesting. I think I've been always amazed by it, and it's something that you do as Seeds of Scent, and I think I've been following that for some time now. I think nearly a year, and congratulations on that.
thank you.
It's such a beautiful place you've created. So tell us something about Seeds of Scent and how does that work, and how does it even gives us a little peek into what you do.
Yeah. So Caesar Strength is so I created my company where about just a year old, where I started in August last year. So when I created the company, I had two objectives. One, I wanted to share my passion for fragrances with others, and two is I wanted to create like what I call like this scent signature. So when I was at L'Oréal, I worked a lot with the marketing teams to create brand olfactive signatures. So when we say an olfactive signature, it's basically how does the brand smell. So a very classic example, for example, it's not necessarily luxury, but if you think of a Nivea,
Yes.
uh, which is a basic cream. And when you smell Nivea, you know so that's basically a brand olfactive signature. So that's what I worked a lot with different marketing teams. So L'Oreal, as you know, but not all your viewers may know, we had 43 brands in L'Oreal. So you have
Wow.
from Yves Saint Laurent Beauty to Armani to Prada. The beauty part is part of L'Oreal Group. So I did work a lot on the olfactive signatures. It may have been even a lipstick. So, for example, Prada has recently launched a banana lip balm. So I was not there for the project because it was
Yes.
last year, but they definitely did work with the fragrance team to create the banana smell as well. Otherwise, there's
Yes.
no point talking about a banana lip balm if there's no smell with it, right? So we did a lot of olfactive signatures with brands, and that's when I said, okay, each brand has an olfactive signature. So why don't we each personally have a olfactive signature? And that's how when I created Seeds of Scent, that was my objective. Like I said, it was to share my passion, but also have customers come to me and create their own olfactive signature. So that's what we basically do at our workshop. So it's like a small 2 hours workshop where people come in. We do it in small groups. So it's always quite personalized. We're about 6 to 7 in a group. We start with, I explain to them certain bases of perfumery. Then we go into smelling our olfactive palette. So it's an olfactive palette that I've co-created with another perfumer based in Grasse. So Grasse is the small perfume town where perfumery started in France. So we smell the olfactive palette. And then based on what each one likes, we create their personalized fragrance. So we do about 3 trials. So they get to actually experience being a perfumer. So we just don't create one fragrance. We actually kind of like these mini jars we have where we do 3 mini trials. And then depending on, we test it on the skin, we test it with smelling strips, and then they choose what they want for their final product. And what they go home with basically is their personalized signature. So it's 100 personalized according to what they like, their positive memories associated with different ingredients. And what's more importantly, it's completely unique to them. So in a
Wow.
city like Paris, where you smell a lot of, for example, like fragrances like La Vie est Belle or the more common signatures, I feel it's nice to stand out with your own personalized scent. And yeah, so each one leaves with their own personalized scent to have their own. We talked about the sillage, so they can leave their own
Yes.
sillage behind as they use their perfume.
It's brilliant. I think, like, if I tell you right now to take me to Paris, I will just remember the boulangerie because that is one smell that is stuck on my head. Is the fresh baguette and the croissant which they make.
Huh?
It is such a unique experience and a fragrance which takes me back to my Paris times. I think I've been to Grasse also, and I've been to the south of France, the whole of the region, the Nice, and everything. And it's just such like every place. If I think back, there are some memories, and they're connected to a fragrance. Like everywhere I go, there is a unique fragrance which I live into, and I go back. The understanding. So, if so, for instance, if somebody who wants to become a perfumer or in the industry, how does because
Yeah.
I think 20 years back it was different, and in today's day and age, everybody has the opportunity, and think that how would you show them that way that what is the one thing which they have to do or which have to have or follow to become probably the nose of some industry or even in the smallest perfumery which they
Mm-hmm.
follow their passion, what the they should do.
Oh, well, number one, obviously, smell a lot. The nose curiosity. You need to, whether it's a good smell or bad smell, you need to use your nose, obviously. Take care of your nose. Try not to get a cold. Apart from that, like to really get into the industry, it's easier if you've done perfume school, obviously. If you've not done perfume school, the other way is if you're coming from a perfume family, like in lots of industries, your dad is a perfumer, the sons and the daughters are perfumers. Obviously, in perfume, especially the families in class, you have a lot of that even today. So the father's perfumer, and obviously they're in the
Wow.
culture, they continue. But obviously, not many of us have the privilege to come from a perfume family. So if that's not the case, the best way is, of course, just start training your nose, smelling things. You can even buy yourself online, like olfactive kit. And then ideally, you can do perfume school. So you can do something like I did, like Isipka. You do even in India, you do have now certain courses that offer perfume training. And then if you want to become like a professional perfumer at a fragrance house, so many of the fragrance companies, so we always see the brands like Yves Saint Laurent,
Yes.
we see Lancôme, we see the brands, but we don't always see the perfume houses behind the brands. So these are, like I said, I work with IFF, International Flavors and Fragrances. You have Givaudan. These are the big giants of perfume houses where you can do training. They have their own in-house like perfumer programs where it's quite a long process. It's about a 4 to 5 year process sometimes where you learn to be a perfumer, and then most of the time you just continue to stay with them as a perfumer, and then you start creating fragrances for the company. Basically, IFF and Givaudan would then create the fragrances for the brands. So we don't usually see the houses
Yes.
behind, but they are basically the noses behind many of the big luxury brands.
So how does make what like I've heard and I've seen that many of these perfumers, I think there's a big industry behind a perfume, and it takes a lot of manpower and money to make
Mm-hmm.
into a branded perfume. And as in right from Shalimar and the fragrances which are Chanel number 5 or J'adore, which has been at the top of the top perfumeries, and then we have these craft perfumes which are so unique and so exclusive. Like how does that differentiation work in this industry?
So basically, I would say when we talk about luxury perfumes, me personally, it's not an official classification. I would put it in like prestige. So the luxury brands that we know of, like we said, Prada, Yves Saint Laurent, the more indie brands. So the indie brands are more niche, and then even more niche than the niche perfume. So you have the niche perfume, and then you have also these indie brands, which are the upcoming. So basically, the indie brands and the niche brands, obviously, they're much smaller. They're not always part of a bigger group. Sometimes they are then bought by companies once they reach their success. But when they're smaller, so it can be either sometimes it's a nose, the perfumer that starts their own brand. For example, a brand like Métier Premier, which is quite niche. Not many people know about it. So it's a perfumer called L'Oréal and IFF that started this brand. So it's a perfumer. Or you may have a niche brand but started more with marketing teams. So when it's marketing teams, they themselves may be briefing fragrance houses to
Mm.
create their fragrances. They may not have their in-house perfumers. And again, like I said, once these brands gain success, quite often the bigger groups, bigger companies, the giants are interested, and they are often bought by the, I don't know, maybe a Coty, Estée Lauder, L'Oréal, once they gain success. But me personally, obviously, since I like working a lot of olfactive signatures, niche and brands I feel have more to offer. One is because it's not only the price range. Yes, it may cost a little more a niche perfume, but it's more than the price range. It's more, so they do have lesser budget for marketing. And I
Yes.
sometimes believe when they spend less on marketing, they have more on putting good quality ingredients in the perfume. So many of the niche brands you may not even have heard a lot talking about. They have only selective stores in certain cities, but they have good quality ingredients behind them. Not all, obviously, but most of them have good quality ingredients. And obviously, it's less, the signatures, they would have fewer in their range. But what's interesting, you go and smell and then you try to find what's suitable for you. So they're not tested fragrances. So a brand like a Coty or L'Oréal, quite often they would test their fragrances before launching. But niche brands don't usually test fragrances before launching. So for me, it makes it more unique. So it's not like liked by a lot of people, but if you like it, it's for you. So you need to go and find what you like in a niche brand. But once you find it, it can become your kind of your olfactive signature without having maybe a whole lot of people wearing the same fragrance.
Wow. Okay. And this is very interesting. So coming back to the market which we have, I think in India or even in the subcontinent of Asia, do you think that there are some fragrances which work brilliantly according to the region which a person belongs to?
Yes, definitely. So the cultural, so working of a fragrance is two things. One is the cultural connection. So for example, I mean, talking about India, so you talk about a jasmine. Every Indian knows what jasmine smells like, right? So obviously you already have a positive, not necessarily positive, because some people don't necessarily like a jasmine, but you have a connection with the ingredient. So the cultural connection is important. And when you're selling a fragrance in a certain country, the weather can play kind of a role as well. Like, so a hotter, more tropical country, you may not want to wear the same thing that you wear in a colder country. Like over here, we do with different seasons. Some people have, not everyone, but some people have summer fragrances, some people have winter fragrances. So basically, if you're in a slightly warmer country like India, your fragrance choice would be different from what you have. And then, yeah, the whole emotional and cultural connection with choosing of a fragrance will differ. And then obviously the budgets would differ in a country like India. You have all budgets today. I mean, I don't really have the figures for India, but mass market is dominant. But the luxury segment, we do see, obviously, even better than me, it is definitely growing in bigger cities. So when you come to fragrances, more and more people are investing into more luxury fragrances, which is a lot of online, I would say, for perfumes. I don't have the figures again, but I would say there would be a lot of online retail and people going abroad. So the Indians going abroad, they come to France, they like to leave with their perfume from here.
Yes, they have a
So
story to
the
tell,
like the
right?
Western influence in perfume, I think, yeah. So there's a lot of the influence coming from the Western for the luxury fragrance market, I would say, in India.
Tell me one thing. I want to ask a question because this came into my mind. Is firstly is that we're talking about having clean
Hmm.
ingredients. Is there a organic perfume kind of a thing where everything is clean, or does it even ever exist?
Yes and no. So clean, there are different ways to look at clean in a perfume. One is some people mix like natural with clean. So the natural can be one part, but it doesn't mean because it's natural, it's 100% clean. So when
Okay.
we say clean, we can talk about, is it clean for your skin? Is it,
Yes.
when I wear fragrance on my skin, is it good for me? And is it polluting nature?
Yes.
And also where it comes from. So where it comes from is basically like more vegan perfumery. So basically my brand at Seeds of Sense, we are clean in vegan perfumery. So that for me, it was more important to my brand. So what changes when we're talking about vegan perfumery? We don't use animal origin. So basically
Okay.
in perfumes, for example, musks,
Hmm.
musks in perfumes for a long time were coming from the sperm whale and the musk deer. So today, when we talk about, if we use white musks in our formula, basically a white musk is the synthetic version of the musks coming from animal origin.
Hmm.
So that's one way to look at clean, the more vegan aspect. So you don't use animal origin, you don't test on animals. The other aspect can be, like I said, on the skin. So what's applying on your skin? Does it cause me allergens? So if you're not allergic, honestly, you don't need to bother about it, because a lot of people put a lot into, like, is it allergenic and not allergenic? If you don't have skin issues, only fragrance, obviously not 100% oil, because we,
Yes.
even an eau de parfum, we're at 20% oil and we're at 80% alcohol. But that's another way. If you're really skin sensible, then you need to look at maybe changing your solvent. You don't use alcohol, you
Yeah.
use something else. But it doesn't mean because it's natural, it's clean, because naturals in nature, we do have a lot of allergens in it. In fact,
Yes.
lavender maybe actually more allergizing to the skin compared to a synthetic molecule. So that's also clean. And then the last part is clean is your fragrance doesn't have, without going into too much of scientific details, like carcinogenic substances and those kind of things. So this basically, if you follow the IFRA guidelines, so it's the international regulatory guidelines, it evolves every year. So if you're up to date, so big brands, luckily, they do follow the IFRA guidelines. So in that aspect, we know they're obviously not putting in ingredients that's banned by the international regulation. So yeah, clean has lot of dimensions and facets, not very clear to the consumer. And then you have the whole sustainability where you have refills of fragrances, you have, yeah, basically all that low waste industry and using upcycled ingredients. So that can again be a whole story about upcycled ingredients in perfumes. But that's also a part of it is for the storytelling and the marketing, but a part of it is also is good for the industry. I mean, you're using more upcycled ingredients, like for example, citruses in perfumes. We use only
Yes.
the essential oil, sorry. But now you can also start using like the waste coming from maybe the Tropicana factory using the orange.
Yes.
So how do you create a link between the food industry and the perfume industry? So that's again the
Wow.
upcycling, recycling, which
That is such a
can be
great
another discussion.
it's a great idea. I don't know if any company is doing that, but it's such a great idea that to link the food industry and the perfume industry, because somebody's waste is somebody's treasure, right? So, and that can be
Yeah,
connected to the whole
exactly. Yeah,
industry.
because I spoke about it because I did a small project. So I did a small training with Oxford on sustainability. And as my kind of my project at the end of the course that I did with Oxford, I did a project on how to use upcycle, like cross industry, like waste from certain
Yeah.
industries into the perfume industry. And that's how those ideas have come into my head. Not easy to put into practice, but the ideas are there.
Is any company doing it? Have you, like, in that research, did anything come up of that, any brand?
Yes, you do have the bigger fragrance houses. They do like IFF, Givaudan, many of the bigger fragrance houses. They do, may not be necessary Tropicana waste, the orange peel, but for example, uh, jasmine coming like in India, we have a lot of flowers going to waste,
Yes.
right, in weddings and stuff. And so you do have some of the fragrance houses that not only use the fresh flowers, but also some of the waste flowers. And they're using it in perfumes today. Not on a large scale, but it is started maybe 2 to 3 years ago. Yeah, so it's pretty recent, but at least we're getting conscious about it.
Wow. Okay. That is such brilliant, because today's generation is more about sustainability and recycling, and where the brand comes from. What are the mantras of the brand in saving the planet versus, making a profit out of it. So this reflection is such a great understanding that the companies are changing. Where we left off was something where we were understanding that how the perfume industry is so unknown, and we just know the product. And also, I did a video which is now, I think, just to give us a brief before introducing you
Hmm.
on the perfume industry. So I want to firstly start with, can you give us the back end of perfume industry? Because in the video I talk about the giants of tech industry, the giants of luxury industry, and giants of the cosmetic industry. But there is nobody talk about the giants of the fragrance industry.
Hmm.
So probably the big four. And
Okay,
how does these L'Oreal, Coty, Estée Lauder connect with these fragrance giants?
okay,
And
yeah,
how do they bring that product, which is again we use it as perfumes from branded perfumes, or noses, perfumers, endorsed perfumes, and how do they come to our houses and on our bodies, or how do we feel about it? Just
okay.
understanding on that from you.
Yes. So yeah, that's a great question because a lot of us know about obviously the brands. Some of us know perfumers. Very rarely do we really talk about the fragrance houses. So basically, the fragrance industry, like you said, there are the big four giants. There are a couple of others as well, which are called fragrance houses. So when we say fragrance houses, it's basically where the noses come from. So the noses, the perfumers. So a group like, for example, L'Oreal or Coty, we don't always have like in-house perfumers. You may have
Okay.
certain in-house perfumers, but not all fragrances are like created in-house. So what happens behind the scenes is there's this close collaboration with the fragrance houses. So for example, I take the example with L'Oréal because obviously I worked 13 years with L'Oréal, so it's easier for me. So if we say Lancôme wanted to launch La Vie est Belle, so the marketing team would come to what we call the olfactive cell at L'Oréal. They would say that we want to launch a new fragrance, and then the olfactive cell, so the fragrance team, they would then brief the fragrance houses. So then, depending on the brand, the kind of ingredients, the storytelling, the fragrance evaluator. So basically, that's what I was at L'Oreal, a fragrance evaluator. We would then choose which fragrance houses we want to work with, and then the fragrance brief would be sent out to the fragrance houses. So basically, the fragrance is being the perfumer is at the fragrance house, so they would
Okay.
then create the fragrance and come back to L'Oreal with different. So there's not just one submission; there would be a couple of submissions, and then, well, there's a lot of testing and everything also behind it to finally come up with the final fragrance that's going to be launched. So yeah, there's a lot of this. Basically, three parties: the marketing, the fragrance evaluators, and the whole fragrance house team. So the perfumers, but they also have obviously the commercials, the technicians, and everything that work behind. So it's basically quite a long chain before the
Yes.
fragrance comes to you and gets launched. So there's both parties, the fragrance group and the fragrance houses, involved in the development of a fragrance.
So is there like ever so as a perfumer, as in a nose would work for L'Oreal, or a nose would always work with these big four?
So generally, so there's no hard and fast rule. Each obviously group, each brand as it as their marketing story is. But in general, the nose, the perfumer is with the fragrance house. So
Okay.
for the big launches, they come. Brands like Hermes or
Yes.
Chanel, yes, they do have their in-house perfumers. So Hermes, for a long time, they worked with Jean-Claude Delena. Now they're working with Christine Nagel. So yes, they work on. They have the in-house perfumers creating, though even they may work a bit with the fragrance houses. They can do sometimes what we call open formulas. So there are different models. There are really different models depending on each brand. But generally speaking, most of the big fragrances, the perfumer is based in the fragrance house, and in a group like L'Oreal or Coty or Estee Lauder, you have more like a fragrance team. So there is a big fragrance team working behind it, of course, but they are doing the connection between the fragrance house and the marketing teams.
So the fragrance evaluator is what I think you served as for a very
Yeah.
long time. And did you do the fragrance for fine perfumes, or was it for more cosmetics and hair care and skincare?
So I did a lot. Most of my time at L'Oreal was with skincare and makeup products. So we don't realize that there's everything around us is fragranced. So in our skincare, we worked a lot. I did well in 13 years. I did almost all the L'Oreal brands, from the luxury brands like Yves Saint Laurent, Lancôme, to even the smaller, not smaller, but the more mass market brands like Ombre Solaire. And so each time the process, it's quite similar, where we would receive the brief, like the marketing brief from the marketing teams. And then we would be converting the marketing brief into a fragrance brief that we would then give to the fragrance houses. And then we receive submissions, we smell it, and then work with the marketing teams to decide the one which is the most suitable for the launch for the brand.
So that leads me to this. My next question, Gauri, is that I understand that there is a certain part which is essential oils, which comes from
Mhm.
the flowers and the flora and fauna of a certain, I think, nature. And then
Yeah.
there's a major part of it is either the alcohol-based part. So can you brief us about that essential oil part? This is the most important. That firstly, in a perfumes, how much essential oil and what are the different variations? Because if we have so many like eau de toilette or the parfum, or what are the different versions, like a deodorant would have how much, and then where does essential oils really belong to, and how do they decide that if Prada or if a Valentino or if a brand will have this kind of essential oil or this kind of essential, because you work with so many briefs. So is there
Yeah.
like a combination, like Prada's black or Valentino's red, and how would convert that colors into essential oils? A little bit on that, because that's intriguing to me.
Yeah. So there are a couple of subjects that you touched on. So starting with just a little bit on the eau de parfum, eau de toilette, just quickly to understand. So when we talk about fine fragrance, basically we're alcohol based. We use,
Yeah.
most of the time we use ethanol in perfumery. We can also use a solvent called DPG. So when we talk about ethanol based, alcohol based perfume, we have the basic ones like we call a EDC, eau de cologne, which is about 5% solution, and eau de toilette, which is about a 10% solution. and eau de parfum, which is about a 20% solution. So that's generally speaking. And then in that, for your concentrate, which is the 5, 10, or 20%, it is a mixture. So it can be natural, essential oils, but it can also be synthetic molecules. So basically, it's most fragrances, if it's unless it's really mentioned 100% natural, will have natural as well as synthetic molecules in the formula.
Okay.
You do have 100% pure, but it's not that common today. For several reasons, we do use synthetic molecules in a fragrance and gives it sometimes more powerful, sometimes even for sustainability, because the natural may be difficult to obtain, for just having a more varied scent palette. So that's why we use synthetics. But when we talk about essential oils, yes, it's natural. If we use the word essential oil, technically speaking, we're talking about natural fragrances, which for a brand, like I said, unless they're really clearly writing 100% natural on their pack, it's not 100% natural. Though there will be naturals in it depending on the storytelling. So, of course, I again take Lancome because you talk about the rose in Lancome.
Yes.
So, obviously, yes, there is natural rose in the fragrance, but it's not necessarily 100% natural unless there's really a claim of 100% natural on the packaging.
Wow. Okay. Then compared to that is to bring this up is very intriguing because sustainability is a big factor, and I've seen that a lot of these, uh, at least Generation Z is very, very true to recycling, upcycling, and sustainable way right from the start. That whole journey from when the rose or the jasmine is plucked till the time it is made into a perfume, everything has to be, blockchained, and to understand that. And I've seen that, like I was researching, that there's some the big fours are a lot of
Mhm.
controversy on the uses of you know child labor or the understanding of the environment, but there's never L'Oreal or Coty or as or Estee Lauder in these things. Is it because
Mhm.
these perfumers they manufacture the perfume or L'Oreal manufactures the perfume? Like how does it differentiate?
So the concentrate will come from the fragrance house, but the
Okay.
packaging in the final bottle, it will be the brand's industry. So your
Okay.
raw materials. So why do you see when you talk about ethical sourcing, or it's more the fragrance houses because they are
Okay.
sourcing their raw materials. Again, if the ingredient isn't active in the formula, so if we talk about like more cosmetics, so then L'Oreal may be sourcing it like directly. But otherwise, yeah, we see a lot of ethical with I think it's a good change for the industry because now it's no more like it's part of it. You have to be
Yes.
ethical, you have to be
Yes.
sustainable. Otherwise, obviously, you're going to be behind. So it's a good part, I think. So when you talk about ethical in fragrances, for me, there's many things. There's one is the bottle, the packaging. So what's good? That's more for the brand where lots of fragrances are offering the refill options today. So
Yes.
you
Yes.
come
Yes.
back with your fragrance, you refill it. So that's the packaging part. Then you have what's ethical inside the bottle, obviously, the juice. So that's a little bit more got to do with the fragrance houses. So that's where the ingredients are being sourced from.
Mm.
Are they ethical? Yeah, because each ingredient has different sourcing. Obviously, like you have a patchouli
All
coming from
right. Okay.
Indonesia, you have a vetiver coming from Haiti, and more the big companies are working with these the local farmers. So it's like a kind of like the field to fragrance kind of
Yes. Like farm
which
to
is
table.
exactly like the farm to labor. So you have the farm to table, you have the farm to fragrance, which is it's positive, even though part of it is for storytelling. But even if it's for storytelling, it's still having a positive impact, I think, which is healthy for the industry for the long term.
Once I understand that, but what about storytelling? Because today's day and age, like I've researched on the AI aspect of it, and I was seeing that they know that when to target an ad to me. Like say for instance, that they
Hmm.
know my profile and they know that what I've clicked and what I've liked, what I've bought online and structure like that, and they know what to give me in perfumes. So is it like is there ever a fair choice that ever a consumer has that I want something which is totally me, or is that just programmed to go in a shop and buy something because I'm targeted with so many touch points? Like, do you have a say in that? Because you as a perfumer, you've seen the backside of it, like how we develop like
Yes.
fragrances for happy or nostalgic, or you feel like yes, you want to relive a moment. But how is it that is there a line of reality based versus what is digitally based?
Yes and no. So obviously there is some reality, because obviously if they're showing you a jasmine on the fragrance, yes, there is going to be, it's going to be smelling like jasmine, or they're showing you sandalwood. But my main advice I give to all my clients who come to me is test your fragrance before buying. For me, it's really important that you wear your fragrance, you put it on your skin, wear it for a day. Don't buy it, like, don't go to Sephora and buy it the same day, because one is, in a shop like Sephora, obviously you're
Yeah.
bombarded with so many fragrances, you're overwhelmed. Your nose is not going to be the same as if you're outside in an aerated place. And secondly, you need to wear it on your skin, because like you smell it on a smelling strip, okay, it gives you an idea. You see your olfactive pyramid where they explain to you what's the top, heart, and bottom notes. You get an idea. But that's what was, sometimes it's a marketing vision. It's not wrong. Obviously, it is what's in the fragrance. But like you said, with each fragrance, there's so much of your personal value that you can,
Yes.
and your perception. Maybe there's jasmine in the fragrance, but you don't smell it at all. But you smell more of, I don't know, more citrus. So that's why you need to wear your fragrance. Before you buy a fragrance, I always tell clients, wear it like for a day at least, even if you, and then if you like it, because what you're smelling in the shop is basically what we call the top notes, which are quite diffusive. And then your heart notes come later. And then what, at the end of the day, you're going to smell your bottom notes. So sometimes you think you like a fragrance because when you bought it in the shop, you liked it, but basically what you're smelling was a lot of the top notes. And what's really
Oh,
going
yes.
to stay on your skin until the end of the day is going to be the dry down notes or the bottom notes. So you really need to smell it like on your hand throughout the day to see if you really like a fragrance. And if you're comfortable with it, with wearing it for like a couple of hours, then only I would say go for it, buy it. Of course, the storytelling is nice. It gives you an idea of the brand. Like, for example, sustainability. Obviously, that wearing or not wearing it. So a brand that's talking about sustainable, if you believe in it, or a vegan perfume, of course, look up online, see what's the marketing campaign. But for pure smell, for me, the advice is you have to wear it. You have to spray a fragrance on yourself, because you need to create that link and that olfactive connection with your perfume.
Very interesting take on that. That leads me to, again, we both share our roots in India. And I remember in India, my father used to have is these small bottles of essential oils, which is very predominant. At that point of time, perfumes were very, very expensive because they used to come only from
Mm-hmm.
abroad and from Western countries. And they used to go to Dubai to buy perfumes. So somebody would go, oh, please
Yes,
get me this perfume from Dubai.
exactly.
At that point, I'm talking about 30 years back.
Yeah.
So in India, I think there is a huge influx of so mix of two things. Is that the essential oils, or attar, as it will say in India, which is non-alcoholic based essential oils. They come in small these things, and they're very
Yes.
strong in essence. I
Yes.
want, yes, can you shed some light? Do they have the same top notes, middle notes, and base notes? And is it the same process which they make it, and when they use it? Is it two different things? Because I believe that as a fragrance manufacturer, they would just make essential oils, which then be
Mm-hmm.
diluted into alcohol, and then multiple things. Where
Yeah.
in India, where I think I've seen there's a lot of these small craftsmen who make small attar factories where they're in Lucknow, as in Nawabs. They have
Yeah.
these generations been doing, and Mughals has been using attars for so long, as in
Yep.
nearly 200 years, 300 years. So is it the same process versus the same product?
For me, it's pretty different. What's can be common is you have the distillation process. So, but attar is natural. So you
Okay.
don't use, to my knowledge, you don't use. There's no synthetic molecules in it, and of course, there's no alcohol. So that's why in the Middle East, for example, like you mentioned, it's interesting because non-alcoholic
Yes.
fragrances. So my understanding of attars is they use like a distillation process on a base, like traditionally it was a woody base like sandalwood. So they would distill an ingredient of, it can be a flower or jasmine, but it would then be used on a, like a woody base like sandalwood. Sandalwood
Okay.
is used less and less today, because especially the Indian sandalwood in perfumery, it's actually by regulation, it's banned because of all the
Wow.
deforestation in Mysore. Today we use the Australian and New Caledonia sandalwood in perfumery. In India, I think the smaller shops maybe they would be using a little bit. But so traditionally attar was on sandalwood. Today it's not necessary sandalwood, but it's generally a woody base. So because it's woody base, so woods are basically bottom notes.
Okay.
So they're much heavier. So bottom notes are the more notes that last longer on your skin, that are heavier. So yes, you could kind of make a olfactive pyramid with attar, but I would say they're demo. One is depending on if you're making an attar of jasmine, obviously you're going to have the floral scent, but you're going to also have this heaviness from the bottom. I would say they're quite heavier compared to like a normal fine fragrance, because they, since it's natural, the notes are much heavier, and because they're not alcohol based, obviously it's interesting for people who don't want to use alcohol on their body. So the distillation is done with like water, compared to like, contrary to like a traditional fragrance, we don't always do steam distillation with attars. I think they use like a huge pot where they put the flowers, and then you have steam distillation, which then gives you the fragrance. So the advantage is also because it's strong. You can have like positive emotions associated with an ingredient, but also because they're strong, you have to be careful if you have, for example, sensible skin. So that could be
Yes.
something to take into consideration, because they're quite intense. If you have like skin allergies, you can't use. It's better to use avoid it or lower levels, because they're super strong fragrances as such. And of course, they're much more expensive. I mean, because they that's why they're always small, sold in like little
Yes.
jars, or because they're intense. So you just need like basically few drops. They can be quite long lasting, because like we talked about the bottom notes, they have a lot of bottom notes, so it can be quite long lasting on the skin. And also, I think you were asking about like non-alcoholic fragrances. You have also what you call like solid perfumes, so which is also something that's interesting. It's not necessarily Indian origin, but it's basically you have fragrances based on like a a substrate which is solid, kind of like adding a balm to your skin, but heavily fragranced. So that's
Wow.
also for people who don't want to use like alcohol based fragrances. Solid perfumes, they're starting to get a little bit more popular. But then with solid perfumes, you don't have the diffusion. So because
Yes.
they stay on your skin, but they're not going to diffuse. They're not going to give what we call a sillage. Sillage is when you're like your scent trail. So yeah, you have a lot of different formats. Though the classic alcohol based fragrance does stay as the most used format today.
Wow. Okay. Beautifully said. I think the fact that yes, and I always understood, and I think had a perception about others is understanding that it stays longer, but I think it didn't have that kind of a depth. Also, one thing which I was researching and understanding is that big celebrities is a big thing that when somebody chooses a celebrity for certain perfumes, does that matter to the perfume itself, or is perfumes by perfumers are more stronger and better? Like, where is the balance of what? Because I was researching that there is a perfumer by Sonia Constant.
Hmm.
She's a perfumer herself, and she has a brand called Ella K, Ella K perfumes, or
Yeah.
Hira Weem, and he has his own set of perfumes. Carlos Benoit, one of the top noses, and he himself has certain things, and also Isaac Sinclair for Abel.
Yeah.
So are these themselves the celebrities, or would like have Johnny Depp for Dior Sauvage, like that, and is that managed? Like, how does companies think, or what do they do to make a story or like a marketing like that?
So, yeah, interesting question to think who's the face behind a fragrance. So both exist today. So obviously the actors, actresses, and even in when we talk about like celebrity fragrances, you have for me two categories. One where, for example, a Justin Bieber fragrance, his
Yeah.
name is his brand, right? In the US, it's like the I would say the trend is going off slightly, but like 10 years ago, the top market were all the celebrity fragrances. So basically their own brands, Beyonce or was their brand
Yes.
basically.
Jennifer Lopez.
Exactly. Those were in the US. It worked a lot in the US market. In India market, I think we did have a couple which didn't really
We
work. I
had
think
Amitabh
even Shah Rukh
Bachchan.
Khan or
We have
uh,
SRK.
exactly. It didn't work as well, I would say, as the American celebrities. So you have those kind brand celebrities where so even they themselves, they're working often with bigger brands, the celebrities. And then you have brands like Chanel. They're using models. So it's not the fragrance is not called after the celebrity, but obviously they're using or you said Dior with Johnny Depp. So for me, there's both the celebrity where the name is coming from and the celebrity. It's a whole different. So it depends on the market again. Like I said, like I think the American market at some point, yes, they were quite influenced by the celebrity fragrances, creating their own brands. I mean, today you still have like the Kylie who's launched her fragrance
Yes.
last year. I'm not too sure how well it's doing, but I think it's doing pretty well, at least in the US market. But for me, what's more powerful is like to have a successful marketing strategy. Like come back to Chanel, like a Chanel number 5. So this fragrance was launched in 1921, I think, which
Wow.
was 100 years ago. I think the date is 1921, so we're like more than 100 years ago. They always used, in terms of smell, that point when it was launched, Chanel number 5, it was a revolution. Why was it a revolution? At that point, all the fragrances were quite oriental, based on flowers like jasmine, rose, more classic. And then Chanel, the perfumer Jack Paul, she came with what we call like synthetics in fragrances. So it
Mm.
was something called aldehyde, which smells quite metallic.
Oh,
And when he launched it, so it was obviously Mademoiselle Chanel at that time that validated and launched it. They said no, it's too different, but it worked. For me, it worked a lot because they used heavy celebrities behind it.
oh,
Even
yeah.
today, smell wise, yes, it was a revolution. It's very interesting because it changed completely from natural perfumery. We moved to using synthetics in a positive way in fragrances. But why is it today still a bit bestseller? For me, it's because they have continuously used celebrities behind the brand to push the marketing image. So I think they started with like Marilyn Monroe, and she said she wore it to sleep.
Yes, yes, that's the
And
turning
then
point.
and then everyone wanted the Marilyn Monroe smell to sleep. So yeah, of course, the celebrity has the really power behind fragrances. And then you also spoke about, because which is also interesting, which we're moving to. I think it's more recent where the perfumer is becoming the celebrity. So for me, one of the best examples is like Francisco Jean. So you have the Maison Francisco
Nisha.
Jean, where he was one of the perfumers that he was not one of the first, it already existed, but that really, when you see the advertising of Francis Cousin, you see his face, the perfumer.
Yes.
The name is his, the face is his. I'm not sure, but I don't think he uses any other celebrities in his campaign. But then it's the perfumer behind the brand. We go into more niche perfumery. So that's why you have a lot of perfumers like Aurélien Guichard that launched Métier Premier. So the perfumers behind the brand, but they're less, not mainstream. They're obviously luxury, Chanel and everything, but they're not niche. So when it's the perfumer behind the brand, I would say we're more into niche perfumery. And the trend is going, I mean, luxury fragrance is going into quite a lot of niche perfumery, which is nice that more and more the perfumers are creating their brands, and they kind of their brand image for themselves, which is nice. But then I think they spend less on advertising when it's the perfumer behind the brand. So they're smaller, but which for me, it's more interesting because in terms of quality of fragrances, and if it's a perfumer created the brand, they know exactly what they want, what they well good materials. So yeah, you have both exist, I would say, simultaneously, the perfumer brand and the celebrity brand image.
But aren't you a fragrance house like you are the big five now because
Mhm.
you are a seed of scent, right? You make fragrances every week for every
Ex-
different individual, and
yes.
and you develop those fragrances. You guide them that which one is what. And I think I was just thinking that yes, it's such a coincidence that your seed of scent is actually a fragrance house. Is it like that how you term it as?
Yes and no, because I don't sell my fragrances.
Okay.
So I don't like sell. We do workshops, and each one leaves with their fragrance. But I don't have like we each. I have a little example. For example, you make, and then we have the seeds of Sandable, and they write their own name. So each one leaves with their own personalized scent. So I still call myself like Atelier Parfum, like perfume
Okay.
workshop. So yes, each one leaves with their 100% personalized fragrance. But yeah, it's not really like a mini fragrance house, I wouldn't call it. Maybe someday, but not yet. Not yet there,
But
because but it's not my, I mean, for today maybe my objective changes, but it's not my objective today. My today is like really sharing my passion with people who want to create their personalized scent, not for like commercial. Of course, clients can reorder their fragrances. I do get reorders. They come back, but they reorder only for themselves. They don't,
yes,
unless I did have someone create a fragrance, for example, for their wedding, and then
yes.
they prepared like 100 little jars that they gave out as their wedding souvenir, but it stays
Wow.
personalized. It's not like they're not selling it to their friends and family. Obviously, they're just giving it out as
But that is a unique idea, right? That's a brilliant idea. Yes. And you do consultancies for these things also, right? So you consult them and then tell them, okay, what kind of fragrance they need. So it's pretty much the same process, like a brief and a sketch, and then you show them some submissions, and then you decide on 100 bottles of these small perfumes, and
Yes.
then to be
So
given
this
out.
was a small, quite a small scale where they came in. They basically did a workshop, and during their workshop, they said we want to create a like a souvenir. They wanted to wear the fragrance for their wedding and also give it as gifts to their. So we did like a unisex fragrance because both the couple, the
Yes.
girl and the boy, they wanted to wear the same fragrance. So we did little trials, and yeah, basically we did trials, and then they chose the one that they want to wear, and then they ordered like little bottles to give out. So yeah.
Wow. Okay, that is interesting. That leads me to do children, like, even what age do they start having that sense of perfume or the sense of smell to buy perfumes? Because I feel that, yeah, as in when we were children, I think I didn't realize perfumes till I was like in my 20s or 30s to understand that. As in, and
Yeah.
in this day and age, have you had children clients, like teenage clients? And what is the youngest age which you have seen in your atelier?
So my regular workshops are 13 onwards.
Oh
So I
wow.
do
Okay.
have like 12 and 13-year-olds who do come in. And with popular demand from kids, just 2 months ago I've launched the kids workshop. So that's for the 6 to 12-year-olds.
Wow. Okay.
So like twice a month I do like kids workshops for the younger ones because 13 we use the regular palette and we do like a eau de parfum, it's more concentrated. And then for the younger ones, the 6 to 12-year-olds, the palette is smaller because so that they're not saturated by the end of the thing, and it's slightly more diluted as well. So what we do is eau de toilette, like a 10% solution. So
Yes.
it's and I tell them for kids, I don't recommend them obviously to use it like daily. I tell them use it only, let it be a weekend, like weekend smell. Yeah. So it's quite cultural because in India we were exposed to smells from, I would say, like as kids, but not like as
Yes.
perfumes. Right? I mean, perfumes, like you said, it's only when we're teenagers or even older we start thinking about perfumes. Even I myself, my first real perfume was, I think, like 16 years old. Or while in France, it's quite different actually. So in France, because the perfume culture is quite different. I wouldn't say kids have their own perfume, but they would maybe sometimes use their mother's fragrance maybe once in a
Yes.
way. Or in France, I would say it's quite different, the fragrance culture, because the kids here are much more used to smelling their parents' fragrances. Fine
Mm.
fragrance culture is quite embedded in adults, and so it automatically goes to the kids as well. And so often their fragrance memories are like what their perfumes that their parents used.
Yes.
When I ask sometimes what was your first fragrance memory, people would say like a Chanel No. 5 or
Yes.
Shalimar, like many of the classics, because their mothers or grandmothers used it. While for us, I would say in India, we associate more with ingredients, I would say. Like for me, my first fragrance memory was like smelling jasmine on my grandmother's hair,
Oh wow.
because she used to like pick up jasmine from her garden and she would make like garlands with it and
Tajra.
put it on her hair. And that smell of a jasmine was like one of my, when I think back to it, was one of my first like fragrance memories. Was not actually a perfume, but it was just the simple jasmine on her hair.
So we have a couple of questions. I think it looks like a fast a rapid fire round. It's an
Okay,
intriguing thing which you have, and this is just out of the blue. So you just have
okay,
to say the first thing. Is only a few questions, like 4 or 5 questions maximum.
okay. Not trick
Um,
questions.
no trick question. But yeah, as a perfumer, the first rapid fire question will be your favorite perfume.
Ooh, one is going to be difficult. Can we do okay? So
So
my like
give me
go to
as per.
everyday fragrance, not everyday, like, because the thing is when I'm working, I don't perfume myself, unfortunately. But like Infusion d'Iris by Prada is
Okay.
one of my favorites at the moment, because it's like orris flower and quite woody, quite easy to wear. Because the thing is, I'm so much in fragrances that I don't wear heavy fragrances. So that's my more like a daily and more occasional. There's one from the Armani Privé range called Santal Doncha, which is very sandalwood, cedarwood, which has like this amazing like sillage. So you like leave the room and you're still smelling it, with
Okay.
a bit of cardamom at the top note. So I think I also have this little bit of emotional connection with sandalwood and cardamom. So That's one of my more occasional wear fragrances. Well, I have a big line, but we'll keep it to two for now.
I'm sure. One, the best ingredient in the perfume we've seen for you, and the worst ingredient in the perfume.
Like a raw material.
Yes.
The best tough one, I would go with sandalwood. Sandalwood is culturally, but even in a fragrance, when there's sandalwood, I feel it gives like warmth, but at the same time, it also has like this lightness to it if you, depending on how you formulate it with it. So that's one of my all time favorites.
And one of the bizarre ones.
The bizarre what I don't like is pineapple in a
Fine.
fragrance. You do have these fruity notes. I mean, I don't not like fruity notes in fragrances, but pineapple, I feel it used to be like, especially when I used to do with like fragrances for skincare or balancing, like
Which
getting
of
a
the
right.
perfumes does have a pineapple note?
Like I don't have anything on top of my head
Like a
where
juicy
pineapple is
couture will have it?
dominant. Sorry. Yeah, or Escada, those kind
Hmm.
of. So
Yeah.
yeah, for me, pineapple, I love the fruit, but not as like a ingredient on the skin.
So one memory or one perfume which gives you that memory always, which is that perfume, and what is the memory? Like if you like, for me, when I was very young, I had my father used to use a Brut. So Brut is a
Mm,
perfume from UK, and then I don't know if it's there, and then they have a cologne and the Brut cologne, and I have that memory that every time it's so masculine of my father at that time. I mean, right now I can imagine that fragrance in my nose, and I can transport myself to my father using it when he goes out for work
yeah,
or in the morning. And then for my the mom used to have these talcum powder, Old Rose,
yeah,
and again British. And that was fragrant at the point of time. Talcum powder used to be fragrance, and they used to put a lot of talcum powder
exactly.
in their times. So they can transport me anytime, anywhere, like these two things, and that they have my memories of my father and my mother.
Okay. For me, really talking about so maybe not a fine fragrance. I think it would be something as simple as like a Nivea cream. Like the smell of cream because it's something that everyone was using at home, my grandmother, my mother, and it's just this simple floral note which gives comfort, I would say. So yeah, not really a fine fragrance memory, but yeah, just a smell would be maybe just the simple Nivea blue
Okay,
box.
interesting. I think now seeing technology is a big thing, and AI is a big thing. Can AI make a perfume?
Yes, AI can make a perfume. You do have a new fragrance house that has been launched recently that is based only on AI. It's
Okay,
a very small fragrance house. Though to have the creativity, even this fragrance house that has AI, they do have perfumers. So
okay.
luckily, we're not yet out of jobs. But I think in perfume, basically we need to just work with AI and not against it, like many industries. So we have to use it in a good way. And I mean, it can help you, for example, create maybe new different molecules or different combinations. But completely replacing a perfumer, I think we're still quite far away from completely replacing a perfumer.
Okay, interesting. Is there any AI perfume which is there in the industry?
100%, I don't think so. No,
Okay,
because
it'd be
I mean,
fun.
I don't even remember the name of. Yeah, 100% not yet, but surely there would be things going on. Definitely.
I was seeing that Calice Becker, who's one of those Givaudan's top noses,
Yes.
she has something online, and she shows that a factory of Givaudan, one of the places where they just put the sketch in and they formulate it, and then a machine puts all different kind of combinations and shows it to them. And then they choose which one to go with where. But so there at least a little bit dependence on AI is coming into the industry, and it's acting and
Yes, exactly. All fragrance or Givaudan, I think it's what's called Kato. What they use is their AI tool. Um, but what's good, even with this tool, the fragrance is finished by a human. So
okay.
the AI creates maybe 80% of the fragrance. But today, at least to my knowledge, all their fragrances are still finished by the human noses to give that part of creativity. So it helps. I mean, it's really helping the industry to speed up the process, obviously. So
And make it more refined.
yeah, more trials and because robots were basically always used in perfumery even before we talked about AI because the formulations basically
Yes.
when a perfumer writes his formulation, they have assistants who weigh it out but you
Yes.
already had like robots. When you say robot, not like a physical robot, but like a machine that would weigh it and have the final fragrance. So it was already used to speed up process. So yeah, I think for now we can use it positively and use it to save time more than exercise.
That is interesting. All right. So that leads to this one thing is that which one advice we should give to the future people who want to get in the first in the perfume industry? Secondly, is that of all your experiences, what have you learned and what is your one line or one mantra which you live by?
Okay. So advice to people who want to get into the industry. One is talk because we talk about luxury and fragrance. For me, luxury
Yes.
and fragrance is what you make out of it. So it doesn't have to be opulence when we talk about luxury and fragrance, because sometimes even restraint can be luxury, because
Yes.
a smaller formula, a cleaner formula can actually be more luxury. So one is, yeah, it's what you make out of it when you talk about luxury and fragrances. Generally speaking about the fragrance industry, think more larger. It's not just perfumer or a brand when we talk about fragrance. There's so many other, obviously you need to explore, you need to talk to experts, but there's more than just being a perfumer or like a brand. You can be commercial, you can be technical, you can be like me, a fragrance evaluator. So explore and see what you want to do, or sometimes you don't even know what you want to do. You can learn fragrances, and then once you learn fragrances you see what's interesting you more. So yeah, be open, explore the options before like having a fixed idea, because especially in India, I think we don't know enough about this. Even though we're exposed to a lot to smells, we don't as a profession where
Yes.
I'm seeing in India, but even in France, we're not, when we're not in the industry, we don't know all the different opportunities that we can have. So yeah, if you're interested in fragrances, explore all the options that are possible.
And what have you learned from that one mantra which you live by, at least in the industry and professional wise?
One mantra, for me, have always this emotional connection with the fragrance. If you don't have this emotional connection, whether you're a brand or whether what you're wearing, or don't just do it blindly. Like I say, wear your fragrance, think of it, smell it, and see if you have a connection. Once you have the connection, everything else will flow. Yeah.
All right. That is very interesting, and this has been an amazing chat. Gauri, you have shed light on so many of these questions and helped us answer a lot of things in the perfume industry and also the cosmetic industry and also the fragrance industry as a whole. So I think I would not have known so many things if you not told us that. I think this internet is not really true, and even the chats or all the helps of AI is not going to be total reflection for our personal experiences and the insight which you shared with us. Thank you so much for being on this platform with us today. And it's been a pleasure.
My pleasure to share. To share, it got me thinking on a lot of subjects. So it's always great, yeah, to express out loud some of my thoughts. So thanks for having me.
You've been such an amazing guide for people who will be entering the perfume industry with an open mind. Because if I had known 20 years back that, that this is how it's supposed to be done, I would have done perfume school for sure.
I hope I've inspired, maybe even if I've inspired one or two people to do perfume school, I'd be really happy.
No, because I think I've seen none of these perfumers or the noses are not very open to like have a chat or a talk or even for the whole industry. It's hush industry and it's a mysterious industry, and that's where I think the
True.
mystery
It
sells.
is mysterious. Yeah.
So, and that is why you've shed so much of light and I think given us a thing. Thank you so much for being on the platform.
You're welcome. Bye bye.